Hello, hello. Welcome to the 18th episode of Binge Live. I'm Jason Pramas, Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism Executive Director. What a mouthful. That's Chris Faraone, who, at least on my screen, is below me right now, but always an equal, or at least the editorial director of Binge. And our special guest tonight is next to me on this screen, I believe, Jean Trounstine, longtime Binge investigative reporter. Welcome, Jean. Chris, I think you're going to be leading this one because you edit Jean all the time.
Well, I know it's kind of funny. First of all, I think we probably should have had Jean on already, but I'm glad that we're ready. I mean, we've been having interns on, a couple long old hands, but for those out there, Jean is our real Jean's probably been with us the longest and done the most work, especially in the past couple of years. So a real trooper. So I guess the introduction is Jean is our I always say our prison and parole reporting ace. And has a much deeper history, much deeper background than that. And her work in prisons goes back to teaching actually in prisons. A theater teacher with a history on stage, has now written several books, including fiction books, which is kind of like a dream for all of us journalists. We'll all get around to it one day. Jean has done it. Jean is doing it again. We'll ever talk about that a little bit. But for us, and I have to say, a lot of the work that Jean has done for us in the past couple of years for Binge has been supported by the Gardner Howland Shaw Foundation. And that was off the top of the head. I'm not even reading it out off the screen. They've really been great. And they support mostly prison advocacy and re-entry related projects. We are, I think, the first journalism operation that they have supported. And I think we've done quite a bit with it. So I'll let Jean talk in a second, but I will just say for the first several years, Jean covered mostly prisons, the stuff going on behind the wall, Massachusetts Department of Correction in particular, more than the houses of correction in the counties. But in the past couple of years, has been covering more parole and the process around everything about prison. So did an unbelievable series on the Governor's Council. We can maybe talk about that. Oh God, but that's where judges get tapped. So there's more to the prison system is the point here than just the actual prisons. And there's a lot there. And we have some other reporters that are doing great work there as well. But Jean, the work she's doing now, she was already basically the only person or one of the few reporters, props to Deb Becker at WBUR, in Massachusetts covering prisons. But back then it was like we couldn't say she was the only reporter. With parole, we can say she's basically the reporter. And we'll let her tell you more about that. So look, why don't we start with Jean? Why don't you just tell us kind of how just about your background getting to this point? And I know that's a long background, and I know you credit us with the journalism part of it to a degree, but Jean is a writer, and I think that's important. We don't talk about that often enough at Binge. How we want people to write. I hate the word let, but we let people write. A lot of editors try to stomp on that. I'm sure Jean behind my back says that I do the same. But Jean, why don't you just tell us about yourself as a writer, as an author? Oh, and I forgot something else. Jean is an actual author. Jean had book deals when that meant something, and you can pay a mortgage with that. And Jean is an actual writer. It's really amazing.
How about that?
So,
yeah.
Thanks for coming on. We're always in great company with you. But tell us just a bit about that, and
All right.
what were you up to before we met you?
The 5-minute version, because so I taught. I guess we'll just say I started I've been an academic and a professor all of my career. That led me to teaching in prisons. I taught writing, I taught theater, I directed 8 plays at Framingham Women's Prison. That led me to my first book, which was Shakespeare Behind Bars, which Chris had actually read and knew about many years ago, which impressed me because so many people don't know about theater in prison. Anyway, that whole project got me in I would say invested in what people go through who are in prison. And skip forward to some years, I a young man wrote me a letter from Shirley Prison, Carter Reed, about going up for parole and wanted me to do some research for him about parole. At the time, I knew nothing about parole. And this was in maybe 2012, 11, 12. And right about that time, we had a major thing happen in Massachusetts where Dominic Sinelli got out of prison, killed a trooper, and the entire parole board was essentially let go. I use those quotation marks by the governor, Governor Deval Patrick. And that whole mess got me engaged in parole. And actually, the first article I wrote was for Boston Magazine, and it was a very traumatic experience for me because I was edited so totally. And I wrote for them for quite a while. But I always kept in my mind that I knew Chris and I sort of was interested in, as I got more engaged in parole in order to help Carter, I was continuing to write and continuing to think about the issues, but I started writing a book about him called Boy with a Knife. This and he had killed someone when he was 16 and coming up for parole with a second-degree life sentence. And I went to a parole hearing. I'd gone to one parole hearing before, but that is really what got me engaged. I want to say that I probably, and I don't mean this to be blowing my own horn, but I probably know more about parole than most people in Massachusetts, except for lawyers. And I'm not a lawyer. So I mean, parole attorneys know much more than I do, but I really have studied it. I've engaged in it. I understand it. I see what the parole board does. It fascinates me. And I think things that people don't know about are things that interest me. And parole is something that people don't know about. They don't understand it. So
we framed your whole we'll get to the most recent article in a second, but the one before that, which was quite a investigative piece, and also incorporated a lot of the research. And I'll just say it, and you could explain it how you like, but the way I see it, not only does Jean report on things that aren't being reported on, but a lot of the data and a lot of the information she's actually putting it together. So it'll exist not in charts, but in a series of documents. Or a couple of years ago, what was it? We had a team, I think 3 or 4 interns who came to the State House on several occasions and hand recorded every single vote taken by the Massachusetts Governor's Council on judges. So, and because those votes only exist on paper, in paper files, right, in a room behind the Governor's Council at the State House, a room made with horsehair walls. That's how old it is. So I think it's pretty safe. But if anything ever, God forbid, happened, that we don't even know who voted for what judge, and that's important for a number of reasons. But so it's more than just investigative. It's really this just tedious work and a lot. So tell us about what you didn't know.
Wait,
go ahead.
I want to go back to something before that, Chris. 1 second. I
Yeah.
want to go back to when I first came to meet you, which was I had an idea I wanted to write about the entire sentence of life without parole. And I came and I pitched this idea to Chris. And I came to him because he had known something about me. But I want to say that what makes BINJ different, I'm just going to put this in sideways, but what makes BINJ different is I have always been incredibly encouraged to do my own writing, to really have my own style, to say what I think is true. And Chris has helped me become a reporter because I really am a writer who always wanted to also be a reporter. That wasn't my first language. So that's just a sideways thing of how I got there. But Chris is right in that there's no public records that exist for the Governor's Council. It's very difficult to get public records for the parole board. So much of the material you have to get it yourself. You have to keep the records or find the records or get people to help you get the records. It is not easy. Plus, many times you don't get anybody answering you anymore. It used to be you could ask someone who was from the, who talked to the media at Parole or the DOC. They really have a wall up now talking to reporters.
And it's crazy because, you would think they would just kind of count their blessings. There are barely any reporters ever even asking them any questions. Mass Live has done some decent work. That's the Springfield Republican of late. And, so I don't want to say there's like nobody asking questions. There have been a number of deaths in Department of Correction. Props to Eliza Dewey, who's been doing work for BINJ and report on the healthcare system in general. But it's just crazy, and the door's shut, and it's great. There are people like employed by some of these agencies to do media relations, and there's barely any media left, and those of us who are asking questions, they don't want to talk. So let's go back. So that story that you did about you're fascinated with what people don't know, but I think in that, when you're learning a lot about parole also, and you're going out of your way to learn it, so it's not exactly out there. Just give us the some of those. I know we might not, and we have some of those numbers in the article. Check out BINJ.News, and we'll post that on this. But what are some of the kind of revelations that your data crunching has led to? Just give us that big picture of parole in Massachusetts right now. What does it look like? And I just want to add in, this is my little, and we can editorialize a little. That's the beauty of having the webcast as opposed to when we're doing the reporting here. I think I do know what you would say. For me, it's like when we're editing these pieces, I'm well aware that a lot of the rest of the Massachusetts media sees some of the reporting we do and perhaps thinks it's a bit much on the advocacy side. And I would argue, I would say, look at all the victims' families that we speak with. I would say a lot, and because I really do believe that our features tell the whole story, because that's important. But when we talk about what we don't know, all of those people need to know this stuff. So that's families on who are waiting for people to get out, and that's families who are maybe waiting for people to not get out. This is a transparency issue, and also just tell us what's the lay of the land. If somebody wants to know.
I think I think we do lean over backwards to try to put a point of view that is not in the media out there. The point of view that is currently in the media, and you can see it with just what happened with Tanzarius Anderson. 5 articles that I came across already, 5 different articles that were about how Tanzarius Anderson, what the murder was about, who he killed, when it happened, and all about why he should not. Well, they didn't say he should not get parole, but it was an article essentially that was saying he should not get parole without saying. In other words, here we go. There was either the victims were behind this, the DA is behind this, and newspapers so often regurgitate what is the main push. And so our goal and my goal has always been, what is the other side of the story, which is back to why I wrote Carter Reed's story. I got, when Boy with the Knife came out, there were protests at Porter Square Book, and they chanted, "Boy took a life." People tried to get me fired at Middlesex, where I was teaching. I had a lot of harassment. I really understood, bottom line, what it was to speak out and say the truth about something and show a perspective that wasn't well told, and be hated and get vilified. And it was quite an experience for me. So I do this work with that understanding. I say that to Jason and Chris. I know that there are risks to take here, and that when we wrote, Chris, the report, that one thing that we did, which was very controversial, that we had 5 anonymous sources in. You remember from
Yeah.
5 anonymous sources from.
Now that was about the board itself, but I would,
That was about,
which is separate from all of this. That's it. Like that's
right.
what I'm not trying to please everyone. That's not my
Right.
style. My point is that a lot of the work you're doing is about the mechanics, the mechanism, what's going on there, the agency, right? The bureaucracy, and that's important too. And I'll also say that it's, I don't have numbers on this, but certainly the disgruntled are the loudest. It's like with every other issue. There are a lot of victims, families that do not want to see people locked up and thrown away, have the key thrown away. And there's also, we could talk about how red states are seeing the light more because of financial concerns. But so why don't we just talk about, actually back to some of those specifics. What is the general, some of the things that really stick out to me editing your pieces are how overworked the parole board is and how the system's not broken, but really slower than it should be. And if you just explain how parole works.
The fact that, the parole works in that the governor nominates members for the parole board. Right now, we are down 1 member of the board, and Governor Healy hasn't responded for 9 months with nominating a member of the board. We wrote about that. So the relationship of the governor to the parole board is very political. It's very, she nominates people, or he nominates people that are recommended, not always come through parole. Maybe a friend or a crony or somebody says, I want to end my career on the parole board. I'm done now I'm not mentioning any names specifically, but
or not end their career. I was looking up I was fact checking with our your last piece. 2 of the people are what, judges now? 2 of the former parole board. I did 2 of the recent people we mentioned. It's just a revolving door, and it's like
3 recent people. Not only that, I had to go to the State House, but we did an article that had all of the people who'd become judges, and many of them use it as a stepping stone.
Right.
Correct. To be chair of the board, to be so on. So in answer to your question, the governor nominates parole board members. The parole board members then get approved by the governor's council, which is how we got interested in the governor's council, because they approve parole board members as well as judges. So the power is not in the legislature there, it's in the governor's council. So that process happens. Then the board has to do all these hearings at houses of corrections and state prisons for people who do not have life sentences. I think it was over 3,000 of those hearings last year. And then the full board has to do lifer hearings, somewhere around 400 lifer hearings, full board hearings. Then they have to vote on cases. They read hundreds of pages on each case. There's no way they can all do that without going to, they can't. So some of them are less prepared than others.
Now, I got to say, this is the kind of thing that there's no way it's not being handled by AI in other states already. This kind of or at least being graded before it hands over there, and that's a separate issue. I'm just throwing this out of nowhere, but because the sheer and I want to say that your report, we're not dumping on the board all the time. They're working their butts off. There's a lot going on, and I think you've given them a real fair shake. Can you just tell us who? Not that we're going to go through each one of them, but and I know they're not monolithic, but what's a general kind of person who's on the parole board? This to me seems like the craziest way to earn a living is deciding the fate of people. It's like almost like being executioner, to be honest with you. And so yeah, who are these people? And not to diss them, they almost out of respect, someone's got to do it. And it's not like the parole numbers are so bad. So
let me answer your question before I forget. I might forget by the time you get to the next question. All right, so who's on the board? There are we have a statute in Massachusetts which says how the board should be formed. And it says we have to have people on the board that come from different things like law enforcement, forensic psych, social workers, it could be education, a variety of things. Unfortunately, we get most people from law enforcement. We get, and when I say law enforcement, I mean parole, probation. They've worked for parole, probation. They've worked as former cops. They've worked as different kinds of things. Maybe not former cops. That's a governor's counselor, but they come from a control mentality. And then we have some people who come from a healing, help mentality, social worker, forensic psych. Many people feel we don't have enough people on the parole board. Many people feel we need more. We need a formerly incarcerated person. You know, that happened in one state. That person, I can't remember if it was
In
Maryland.
one state, it's only in one out of 50 states, there was finally a formerly incarcerated person on
Great, great.
It might have happened more than that, but I know of one where it was so controversial, they managed to get her. They framed her with something and got her off the.
Wow. Well, not
Wow.
to. I guess I'll make an easy transition to your most recent piece, which
Yeah.
is about a hearing at the State House on Beacon Hill in Massachusetts, by a commission. You know, some long-winded named commission with different various stakeholders, and they are basically trying to streamline correction operations in Massachusetts between, you know, the counties and the state and blah blah blah. I think that by the way might make for another article. We try to do some inside baseball on the live podcast. So here's our open newsroom. That could be. But for now, you wrote about a particular hearing, and on that committee, unlike the parole board, there are some stakeholders who actually represent stakeholders from the incarceration side of the equation. So why don't you tell us about that hearing? We can get into the specifics of it about Angelo Gomez, who's the current head of the parole board, who did testify there.
There's a commission that was formed, you know, as the legislature seems to form commission after commission after commission. So this is a commission to try to harmonize, to get the different agencies to work together, DOC, parole, probation, and reentry, you know, and this hearing, according to the co-chair, Senator Brownsberger, was supposed to be about reentry. It ended up being about, it ended up focusing on other things beside reentry, many other things. It was not clear really what Angelo Gomez, in my opinion, was there to talk about. He gave a report on parole, and he is the head of the parole board, the chair. He comes from a background of being the head of the field office. The field office are the parole officers who actually work with people on parole in the field versus being in the institution.
Now that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me on the surface, right? I mean, sounds like somebody who's really been in it, right? I don't see you're not saying that as a knock, right?
No, I'm saying that his mindset still is very much on the field, and all of the reporting that he did at the commission when he was really shined and spoke very easily was when he talked about things that he had been involved with for years. He seems slow, in my opinion, slow on the uptake on many of the other aspects of parole, and he's been on the job since October 29th. And so I feel like he should have my feeling is his handle on many other things about parole was less knowledgeable, and he relied on other people for information, and some of it he got wrong.
Now, before we get to that, I just want to ask, so I do forget, I'm not just pretending, so you say it. What is is this kind of, I also cover the Cannabis Control Commission, and they're always under budget, so they're always like asking for more money in their budget. What is the potential solution for the parole board? From what I recall, this is kind of like more like the Supreme Court, where like they're like put more members on, so there'll be less work. Are they also asking for more money, or is there like another way they can streamline operations? Like, what is what's the call here? Like, what is, in addition to what we're about to talk about, the numbers, what is he asking for? How do they get help with these huge caseloads?
Well, I don't think that Gomez Well, okay. Let's start back with how Gomez got there. He was a nominee of the Healy. How did he come into her frame of reference? Some people think, I'm not going to say names, that he is a plant in a sense by EOPS, which we of course do not say in our reporting, but that is something that some people say.
Executive Office of Public Safety and Security.
So what do they want? What does EOPS want versus what someone else wants? EOPS wants things, as far as I can understand right now, to run smoothly. They got rid of, many people think, the former chair, Tina Hurley, who had a very high paroling rate, who was beloved by many people, unclear why.
I gotta say, if we were a liberal tabloid, Gene, the way people accuse us of, we would have ran that story headline day after day. I mean, there was literally a person, Tina Hurley. You reported on her, who was, really people seemed to like the work she was doing. The paroling rates were up. She was just out. No comment. We did not push her hard. We asked. Anyway, I just had a comment. I think that's a huge story, and
she won't speak about it. I tried to interview her. She's not interested in telling that story. She doesn't have a job right now. I don't know what her next job is, and so she doesn't. She's whatever. So I don't know if there is a story. I want to make that clear. I'm just saying these are suppositions that are in the air. So EOPS has something in mind over here. The parole board has a charge to let people out that that they think are going to be not a safety risk in Massachusetts. So they have a certain goal of what they're trying to do. And so I think this commission they see, I don't know how much it has to do with finances. I never asked that question, so I can't really discuss the financial aspect, but how these things are not working together is obviously creating financial excess.
Interesting. Well, so basically, there's the parole system. I know you still look at what is happening in the prisons too. Kind of a big picture, Massachusetts prisons. I know. First of all, I know a lot of your readers. I see it as our job at BINJ to write for that constituency that is not getting that important stuff. They have people in the system. They just want to know basic things. Healthcare, what's going on, parole, what are the chances, what are the percentages chance that people might get out? That's a big part of our readership. But there's also, there are people who are interested. I'm always yelling, nobody cares. That's not true. We know that people are reading. Thank you for those who are out there. For the latter in particular, or I guess for all of the above, what do you see as I'm gonna inject my own opinion. I don't see any momentum. We've been doing this for years, and it's kind of like 2 inches forward, 2 inches backward. There's sometimes something, but it's always, there's still like barely any money put toward re-entry. There are still savage beatings in the counties and in the DOC. There's less transparency than ever, and usually Jason's the downer. I'm usually the guy looking
I
for
haven't
the
been talking,
positive
so
here. But with the DOC in particular, it is just unbelievable, and I see less and less attention paid. If there's anything, not silver, but if there's any positive, I see it. It is sometimes in parole and people getting out. And I'll throw one more thing on there since I'm being negative. There are a couple of, we didn't talk about commutations and other functions, but there are some people. There were, I think, 3 individuals in your most recent story who I believe the last
right
governor,
This is the story here.
approved. I don't want to get this wrong. What approved? What was it? Some sort of clemency for,
There
and
were
who
4 people
Healy
who
is
were
not going to
approved.
let out. So,
Well, there were 4 people approved, and
4.
Healy hasn't decided on those 4, and they were over a year ago. When Baker was in, he approved 3 commutations, and they actually got out. Thomas
That
Kuhn,
bleeding heart.
William Allen, William Allen, and Ramadan Shabazz. These four people were approved by the parole board for commutations, and the governor has to sign off on that, and then it goes to the governor's council. But the governor hasn't signed off. So it's very possible that she can just let them go because that's part of the law that after a year, if she doesn't want to approve them, they essentially are not approved.
And how about that big picture? Any hope? Anything extra bad? Any attention? Any bills? Like, what do you hear?
I think it's really important to say that our legislature has a pretty bad reputation of getting anything through it. There are a couple of bills that are out that are not related to parole. There's a couple of PLS bills. I wish I had prepared myself for you tonight with those bills. I'm sorry, Chris, I don't have them.
Are you kidding? I think we got it. We got great. We got all sorts of information.
Well, we have three bills that are, I think, three bills that are actually three important criminal legal system bills that are not dead and that they are actually going forward. I hope that there will be a parole bill that there are a couple of really good parole bills that do, as you said, add people to the parole board, which is necessary. Also do some things like actually suggest that we have a formerly incarcerated person on the board, other things that some of the bills do. But they haven't, and the governor could just decide right now she could do something with her pen. She could make some decisions, the way somebody whose name I will not mention does. But
well, that's a great transition because I had a I don't know if Jason had anything for you, but as we kind of get to the half hour and we're gonna talk, how can we not talk about the State of the Union before the abomination happens? You did mention Dominic Sinelli. I was reporting at the Boston Phoenix, I think, when that happened, and it's just the reverberations, what that led to, and that of course reminds me of William Horton. I say William Horton because you always correct me. Willie Horton is frankly my grandfather was Willie, so I definitely it is calling a black guy Willie, right? It's definitely derogatory. It's something we've heard, and that is certainly what Lee Atwater, the hitman for George Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, of course, did it. And I don't know if you want to get into the whole background of William Horton, but you could basically, if you could briefly tell us about also just the reluctance of politicians, particularly those seeking higher office, which our governor may be that person. I think a lot of people see her as a future potential president of the United States, or at least a candidate, of course. What are the fears of letting someone getting out under your watch? And doing something?
You hit on the biggest obstacle to fairness in the criminal legal system, which is fear that a person's reputation, a state's reputation, whatever, however small. I mean, it just interestingly happened it happened in New Hampshire in Merrimack, where the ICE detention facility, which received so much protest, and I would love to write about this, Chris.
The Merrimack facility that they were proposing.
Yeah, it's now dead in the water, but it took it was enormous amount of resistance, enormous amount of pressure from people in the state, and the governor would not say anything for weeks. And finally, she was pushed to say, a Republican governor, that, okay, it's not going to get built. She never said, I'm for it not being built, but she said it's not going to get built. But that is the biggest problem, is that people won't sort of show their hand. And they won't. Look at Mondami. He's the opposite of this. He is the first example we have of somebody who is standing up for certain things, no matter what, no matter which way the wind blows, as Dylan would have said. So, that's what we fight against. And it's rough because you really, putting yourself on the line in this climate is about as bad as it can get.
No, and I think it's funny because the argument against that that kind of political behavior would, of course, be that you're gonna eat shit half the or one eight whatever 1 out of every 6 times, and the argument right back in the other direction would be, well, so do you.
Well,
And at least I'm doing what I think is the right thing to be done. And I think
yeah.
so for me, that it boils down that so many times right now, actually, I don't even remember the idiot's name. There's a Republican in Congress who, God, we see this on both sides of the aisle, but this is some egregious behavior. A former aide who had committed suicide, who had been sexually harassing for years. And I think Lauren Boebert, that savage, is the only Republican who's willing to stand up and say that this guy should, be bounced from Congress, and of course that's because the margins are extraordinarily thin in Congress right now. They don't want to lose a member, and I'm thinking like, so you stand up for that. So you want to be in this club. You want to. It's just crazy to me. But of course, I'm not a member of Congress, and I'm not putting up for any of this. And as for the politicians, it's actually the kind of opposite, because for them, it's just playing it safe. For Maura Healey, for the governor, if she let nobody out, what the hell does it matter to her? She's not going to get any. The political calculus is actually quite simple if you're being super prudent. But this is why we see Republicans being more progressive than purported liberals on this issue a lot of the time, because they're pragmatic. And also they're looking at the pocketbook a lot. I mean, we one of our recent stories, the story I was talking about by Eliza Dewey, we had the amount that it costs to incarcerate people in Massachusetts, and it blew my mind. Some of them, if we're talking drug addiction counseling involved, up to $500,000 a year. You would think that somebody from either party could look at that, and now we're going to take parole a little more seriously, but we're still not really seeing that behavior.
Also, it's difficult to find out what we spend on parole a year, to compare it to what we spend on somebody in prison. I mean, we used to be able to find out these figures easily, but they don't.
What's the cost, Gene? Where does it go to? We're talking about like the people who are driving around doing that, or what? Are there other costs that I'm not thinking of? Because I don't see anything going to like helping with reentry again, really. Like where I would like to see the money going. So what are the costs, though? That
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. They're like not out there. I mean, are we figuring a cost based on what it costs to have a parole board? Are we estimating a cost based on
gas?
You said they do have cars. They each get a car.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Driving around. I don't really know what it's based on. I have no clue, because it's not based on feeding or clothing or housing or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since we're gonna, I don't know, Jason, if you want to chime in. I know we're gonna the State of the Union is coming up. I don't know if I was gonna ask though, federal. Do you keep an eye on federal prison system, private prisons? I don't know. I was so disgusted by an article I saw in the Appeal last week that I made a video on my personal Instagram about the calls, the earnings calls for these private prison corporations. I mean, I think we all know how despicable they are, and I think that public prisons, they're terrible in their own ways. One is not better than the other, but wow.
They're bad, but they're not that significant in the big picture in terms of numbers.
Okay.
But federal, one of the things, and I'm just going to give a little plug for my book now. One of the things my book, which is coming out in May, sounds like, maybe you can look at my book up there in the corner. You can see a little bit. Sounds like
pull it down.
Oh, okay. No, sounds like trouble to me. It's coming out in May, and you can pre-order on any place you get books online, bookshop, Amazon, whatever, Barnes and Noble. But it's based on 2 true stories. I mean, typical of me, even though I write fiction, they're based on 2 true stories. And one story is of a real warden who killed her abusive husband and
Right.
had to go to the awaiting trial unit, which I thought was very interesting. What happens when you're a warden and you have to go behind the wall? That's one thing. And the second thing it's based on is a federal prison, Dublin in California, where there was so much sexual abuse and physical abuse. The women rose up and they, as a group, they got connections to people outside. They brought down the prison. And
Wow.
it's a really inspiring story. Dublin, it's a federal prison. And now the good part is they actually brought to trial, which is very difficult. Usually they just move these guys. They brought there was a minister who was involved, a religious person who was involved, as well as the guards. It was not just guards. I'm not sure if the superintendent was involved or what they call him, the warden, but they closed the prison and they moved the women, unfortunately, to all these different prisons all across the country. Now, what are they trying to turn the prison into?
Prison?
What would you guess?
ICE facility.
Yes.
Of course.
Where there will be more sexual abuse. Wow, what a fantastic
great.
way to
So
wrap this
anyway,
up.
right. Anyway, so that my point is that my book is a good story. It's hopeful. It has and I worked with people who had been incarcerated to get lots of facts. So anyway,
I think, and honestly,
That's
I think it's great. I think that these are the kind of stories. As Jason knows, I've been obsessed with Upton Sinclair of late, and The
Yeah.
Jungle, of course, is not. It's based on. I think he spent 8 months in the slaughterhouses, and then went to Princeton, New Jersey,
you have to get my book, Chris. Keep
and
talking.
wrote it. So I think that this is what Jean, what you're doing. Historically, it's been considered journalism. And the reaction to it has been comparable. So I think it's just as powerful. There we go. And not only are we going to, of course, help get the word out about that. I think we got to make sure we connect you to some of our other.
Hold that up again,
work.
Gene. We had it mirrored. Okay, now people can see it properly.
Jason, who's
Sounds
our
like trouble to me.
Jason?
Yeah.
Who's our?
This is a prison.
We have an intern who we're gonna put in touch with you also, who's doing a story about, I think, a bill that overlaps with some of the issues that you're supposed to address. So
I forget who, because we have 30 interns.
so it's gonna be a little. We'll figure out who it is.
Okay.
We're kind of like. But thank you so much, Jean, and I hope if you do watch the State of the Union address that you
God, better
have
you than me.
taken a Tylenol or a
I can,
aspirin.
and Gene, you can leave in a moment, whenever you want. It won't cause any problems. But I will say that all I will say is that, Gene is our, I would say, best known and most read writer over the years. Yeah. And we're really lucky to have her working with us. Oh. So just thank you very much. It's been really fantastic.
With you guys. Okay. It's really one of the joys of my life.
Thank you, Gene.
Okay.
All right, keep kicking butt, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll do a new one soon.
Yeah. So and Chris and I will continue talking here for a minute. Oh, look at that. See, now we're side by side.
Yeah, we're like a show now. It's crazy. And
I know, right?
We can even, and you could probably bring people. And by the way, you see, I'm in a different, I'm like closer now. I have different.
Yeah. That's very cool. So you want to talk about Mr. President, man, and his annual speech? Is that...
I just think it's like, I am as guilty as all the people I accuse of not paying attention to national politics when the bad guys, Biden, all the, most of the evil shit that the Democrats do, it's so subtle, or at least just not as in your face as Trump. And, I fall asleep. I don't pay attention, or I don't fall asleep as much as Joe Biden. But that was a particularly boring presidency. I would say the Obama presidency, and I wrote something about, to this extent on social media recently. It's not like we were like covering the Obama mission. There was tons of protests. There was a lot of other activities. There's a lot of poverty and homelessness and just
always
shit. And not to mention the internet at a very interesting place during the Obama administration. We weren't sitting there. I can't remember ever watching an Obama State of the Union, frankly. Trump, though, I got to say, is even
It's a
I am
spectacle,
beyond.
Chris.
It's
Yeah.
a total spectacle. It is beyond entertainment since it's pretty scary at this juncture. But with a night like this, with so much swirling, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
he's
look
not
at
in a good spot. He really isn't. I mean, not that either of
no.
us would
And
care, but
here's what I will say. Here's what I guess this is what I'm going to boil it down to this. I heard, and this is a so NPR. I unfortunately listened to NPR for a few minutes in the car today, and
I'm
they
sorry
they
for
had
you.
some egghead, some academic, some analyst or whatever, and this
Yeah.
was the quote. It was something like, it was just what you just said. He goes, he's in a tough spot now. Donald Trump, he's really down. He's not doing that well. What everyone's
Mhm.
saying, and then he goes, but that's when Donald Trump does
Yeah.
that. And it's like, it's not a fucking football game.
People,
Who talks about Donald? How could you say that? It's first of all, it's bullshit. Because
everybody knows
what
Trump's
do you
shtick
do?
now, so he can sort of, deflect and do
What
his
is-
usual stuff. But I
Well,
mean,
it's just a
look, the
stupid
economy's
comment.
not doing well. Go ahead. I mean,
No, it's
it's
just a stupid comment. It's so, we don't have to. We're still spinning this all over the place. Come on. It's an absolute, just absolute debaucherous administration. And he's gonna say some crazy ass shit tonight. So that's all.
I mean, we could go, blow by blow quickly and talk about the big issues, but I mean, clearly, like whether we're going to have a war in Iran is huge right now, and the
He's gonna come up
Democrats.
with a new one tonight, I think.
I don't think he wants the war. I think the neocons, around him from both parties actually want the war. Israel
Really?
wants the war, so they want the war. I mean, regular Americans, there's absolutely no reason we would want this war, any more than we wanted involvement in Ukraine or whatever. But
who would ever? I mean,
but like, there's that, right? There's the Board of Peace garbage, the fake UN. Not that the UN's so great either in the last many decades, but better than this Board of Peace thing where basically different, mostly smaller, weaker countries are trying to curry favor with him. And so they get on this Board of Peace,
that one
and
is crazy. I mean,
and they're supposed to fix Gaza after it was destroyed. I mean, and then
Putin's on the Board of Peace. Netanyahu and Putin on the Board of Peace, right? Or at least invited?
I mean, and I think Paraguay, Indonesia, like some other.
This
and
is
it's
where
like
BINJ had a lot of money. We could get a spot on the Board of Peace.
That's right. We would at least be covering the Board of Peace as we should. But and then the economy, as I was saying, is bad. It's slowed down and inflation's up, and that means that all of us regular folks are just paying more and more money for less and less stuff. And we're watching like billionaires become trillionaires, over so-called AI. And what's that all going to do to us?
Well, that's making people rich. It's just because for me, it's just fucking up, things for me and making me.
We know Trump is going to get up there and say everything's great. I mean, in what universe would he not do that? So I don't know. I usually don't watch these things. I wait till afterwards and read the script, basically, and then look at some analysis.
Certain parties around this household do get very aggravated about it. So and also I gotta say I grew up in it, even as someone who doesn't like Bill Clinton. I'm also like an anti-prude. So I was kind of, when people are like, you know how hard it was to have a kid, and I was that kid. People like my mom, like, in the '90s, and having to explain to everyone what a blowjob is, etc. And now, I really, it was like, all right, whatever. Now though, not that I necessarily can commiserate with that, but you can't have Donald Trump on television if your kid's around. You just can't do it, because it's. I mean, everything he says is not okay, and you have to be some woke warrior to think that. I mean, at the Board of Peace meeting recently,
he was talking about. At the Board of Peace meeting recently, he was talking about, like how this president of this country was like handsome, but he's not. I'm not gay though. He's saying, but he's a very handsome man. Like, and then this other guy's a very chiseled jaw, and I'm like, I see what you mean.
It's so crazy, and it's like. Yeah, so 60 Minutes is not my favorite program, but I happened to see a segment the other night about South Africa and Trump and all the lies, and
Oh yeah, all the white people being forced to flee to the U.S. This is ludicrous.
I remember all the memes of like their Fendi luggage and stuff and showing up.
Right. And the fact that like only like 50 people have applied, and they're like the hardest of hard right wingers, right?
Oh God.
Biggest racist of all. So yeah, I mean, I guess we don't have to beat that to death.
Well, that's
since
it. I'm gonna run because I have a few minutes before. But anyway, good one. And yeah, if you're out there and we're breaking these up now, we're doing it for real. We're a little lag, but last week's with Mark was great. This week was great with Jean. So
so we'll have little slices of it on social media. People can look at.
We got a couple. I'm gonna try to grab like 5 out of each one. So
it's great. So we'll end the stream then. Thanks, folks, for watching. We'll be back next Tuesday at 8 with another probably surprise guest, or maybe just Chris and me. Who can say? It's kind of fun that we're spontaneous with this, but it's been good, and we will see you all soon. Peace. Cool.